Hello and welcome to my little trip down road testing memory lane. This is another Q&A video, so thanks very much for sending in all your questions and comments. I love them. So let's get cracking, shall we, with the first one. It's from Yamaha. Loving these videos and recollections. Thanks very much. It takes me back, and like a lot of riders in their 50s, I've gone through the changes from sports bikes to now riding a 2019 Tiger 800 XRT. Nice bike. My question is, what launch really stands out for you? And it doesn't necessarily have to be about just the bike, but the whole overall event. Well, thanks for asking. Well, 21 years now. It's been almost. I've been a road tester. In that time, I've done a lot of launches. Probably 20 to 30 a year, I'd have thought, new bike launches. And been to some amazing places and ridden lots of amazing bikes, from Superleggeras to Desmos Sedicis to RCVs, everything in between. But the launch that always stands out for me is the 2004 Yamaha R1 launch. So the excitement was kind of ramped up to the max because, I mean, I'd only been in the job 2 years, so really exciting to be told I'm going to be going to Australia to go to Eastern Creek to ride the R1. And this is a time where 1000cc sports bikes were in a real purple patch. The GSXR 1000 K3 stroke K4 was the daddy. But then to challenge that was the underseat pipe Honda Fireblade, the Angry ZX10, the first ZX10 since the old jelly mould ones of the late 80s. And the underseat pipe Yamaha R1. So it's a big deal. We went to Australia, stayed in a really lovely hotel underneath Sydney Harbour Bridge, which was really cool. I think we got there by speedboat after we got off the plane. I mean, proper rock and roll launch. All the assembled journos were there, including Neil McKenzie, who was there for TWO, Steve Plater, who was there for Yamaha. And we spent a couple of days acclimatising, including a walk on Sydney Harbour Bridge, which was really cool. And then obviously the main event was the bike. So we had a 2-day test of the R1. The first day was on the road, which is pretty unheard of now to ride a superbike launch on the road, because what can you really say about a superbike on the road? Not much. Generally just on the track, but Yamaha decided to let us loose on the road in a country where the police are probably the most strict when it comes to speeding and stuff like that. To say we misbehaved on our road ride would be not telling the whole story. We were going berserk, actually, pulling wheelies everywhere. But yeah, we got away with that one. And then the second day we were going around the track around Eastern Creek. People like Neil McKenzie and Steve Plater obviously are on another planet. It's really fantastic experience to ride that R1 around the track. Really hot, I remember. It's about 46 degrees. Riding down the straights, trying to lift your visor to get some air in. It was just like being blasted with a hairdryer. It was really extreme, but really, really enjoyable. Those are the days where I was only writing for MCN, so I had a little bit more time to enjoy the launch, rather than now every waking hour is either riding, travelling or writing. So different times back then, and social media and video and websites and everything have just eaten into the time during the launch. And if that wasn't enough, we carried on riding to do the launch of the Yamaha XJ6, the faired one and the naked one, which was all done up the Pacific Highway, the old Pacific Highway up Sydney North, which is a fantastic road, and then finishing off with an area near the harbour, like a bit of old waste ground, where we were just allowed to pull wheelies for pictures for all afternoon. So it's amazing. So we rode an amazing superbike, had fun on a middleweight naked and middleweight faired bike, and we went all the way to Australia to do it. So yeah, that was pretty special. We've done a lot of Aussie launches. and they've been really good as well. But that one really sticks out as being one of the best. Yeah, good crowd, good bike, great location. Yeah, that was the dream launch for sure. But thank you very much for your question. They don't make launches like that anymore, I can tell you that. Right, next one is from James Good. Hello, James. Thanks very much. Would be interested to know what bike has given you the best front end feeling, and as a street 765 RS rider, can you ever get as good feel on a naked as on a super bike? Great question. But generally, super bikes have got more front end feel because the riding position puts you over the front end, so you're more connected to the front tyre. You're digging it into the ground on the way into the corners, and you're getting more feel up through the handlebars. So generally, sports bikes have got great front end feel, but I'd say Japanese ones haven't necessarily, because they generally don't come on the best tyres, and the suspension setup isn't always there out the box. Things like Panigales, S1000s, Aprilia RS4s, RSV4s have got great feel, but you don't really notice that unless you're on the track because the level is so high. But on a road bike, some of the real saucy super nakeds and middleweight nakeds have got great feel. So I'd say the bike that's given me the best front end feel of any bike, and it still does even today, is a Tuono V4. And when it turned from 1,000 to an 1,100 in 2015, that bike's just incredible on the road. You know, the combination of having a superbike chassis, Öhlins forks, Supercorsa tyres, and a kind of a riding position where you can kind of muscle it, and you're still quite over the front. It's still quite a sporty riding position. That's just got sublime feel. You know, every time you let go of the brake and roll into a corner, you always think you could do it faster. It feels completely safe, and that front end just feels so velvety and full of feel. Oddly, a bike that kind of came around at a similar time was the Ducati Monster R, which was the Öhlins one with sticky tyres. That had amazing front end feel as well, oddly. But of course, the Triumph 765 RS has got beautiful front end as well. So you're definitely blessed with a bike with a lot of feel on the road and on the track. You're never going to get a proper race rep feel, but on the road you're never going to be able to push a race rep hard enough to be able to get it in the first place. So for the roads, performance nakeds is where it's at, and your Triumph definitely fits into that category. But great question, thanks very much. Next is from Duncan Orr. I'd love to know, when you go on a test, do you see certain lead riders and think this is going to be a good ride? Similarly, are there any fellow journos that you know are going to be great fun to hoon up a road with? Good question. To be honest, most lead riders on road launches kind of know the score. They're pretty good. They ride at a swift pace whilst being safe. A lot of them you see are either manufacturer test riders that you can chat to when you stop in between sessions to sort of dig out some nice information. A lot of kind of PR agencies use pro riders, either racers, like you see a lot of BSB racers, a lot of people you would bump into UK track riding schools as well. So the level's good. Sometimes you go on launches where the lead riders are painfully slow on bikes that are designed to go fast, so sometimes that's disappointing, but you never know until you set off, really. And then some are lunatics, and you don't really want to keep up with them, but you end up keeping up with them just to save face. They're generally not as enjoyable. And as for the other riders, I'd say, you know, most of the people you see on the launch scene, most of the sort of the full-time motorcycle journalists are all good to ride with. Everyone knows the score. You know, they're long days where you've got a lot else going on in your mind, as well as enjoying yourself. You know, you've got to kind of harvest all this information that you're experiencing on the bike. You've got to think about how it feels. You've got to think about what else you're doing during the course of the day. You know, you've got social media things to update. You've got videos to think about. You've got writing in the evening, so you can't fully let yourself go and just sort of treat it like a lovely ride. Although some people do, who haven't got, quite as much to do. But yeah, but when, we're all friends on motorcycle launches, so I couldn't single out a single person where I think, oh, this is going to be brilliant, because basically you're all there to work still. But when you get to ride with old faithfuls like Mossy and Chris and Al from 44 Teeth, and Bruce from Fast Bikes, people like that, you always know you're going to have a good day. So yeah, thanks for your question. I'm going to plug my computer into the power. There you go. Right. Next is from Gavin Summers. Thanks very much for your question. I think in one of your last videos you mentioned that for a long stretch of time you rode a street GSX-R that you would convert for track day duty at the weekend, or track duty. I'm wondering why you decided on that and whether you were worried about crashing your street bike at the track. I have an RSV4, been using it in that way, but my local track has zero paved runoff, and I feel like if I want to push the pace more I should probably get a dedicated track bike so I don't have to worry about the nice bike. But then again, what's the point of having an RSV4 if you don't let it stretch its legs now and then? Well, yeah, great question, and a quandary, isn't it? So the first part of that is about my race bike. So in 2005 and 6 I had a GSX-R 1000 K5 that I raced, and 2007 and 8 I had a Yamaha R1. Both were long-term test bikes from MCN, and both of them I would take apart on Wednesday night before a race weekend, load the bike up in the van, go racing that weekend, and either turn it back to a road bike on the Sunday night or the Monday night. And I did that for 4 years, and I got it down to probably change the changeover around about 2 hours, which was mainly bodywork, because the chassis and everything, I used to ride my race suspension and everything like that on the road. I didn't even adjust it, didn't even soften it off, so it was a bumpy ride sometimes. And I kind of did that through necessity. I wanted a race. There's no way I could have afforded my own race bike, and MCN let me race my long-termers. So it was good to create content for MCN. I could talk about my experiences taking these things apart, racing them, what it was like to race, stretching the performance of them on track, trying different parts and being able to write about them. So that was, I was always worried about it, but in the heat of a race you can't think about that. I just accepted what would happen. I slipped off each of them once, just very low speed, so never really damaged them, luckily. And then as for your quandary with your Aprilia, for sure, if you've got a dedicated track bike that you weren't worried about crashing, that's going to let you ride it harder and enjoy it more. But as you quite rightly say, you've got a super bike there that's very, very capable. Why not use that on track? So either go down that dedicated track bike route, because you can have as much fun on a beaten up old CB500 as you can an RSV4, maybe more. But the other sort of left field thing I would say is, if you want to find more speed out of your RSV4, I think the way to do it is to get some track riding instruction, because you'd be able to lap faster with the correct technique that actually puts you at less risk around the track. So, if you're just riding round and round and you're pushing it harder and harder on the throttle, you're trail braking more and more on the brakes, that might not necessarily be the way to go faster. When you've got that track technique licked, you'll realise that it's a relatively safe way to go fast, and it is faster as well. The fact you're always braking in a straight line, the fact you're letting go of the brakes to turn so the bike turns nice and easy, and then you can make such a tight line that you come out more or less upright, so you're not leaning on the front and you're not leaning on the back so much. At a track day, it's more about enjoyment than lap times, really, isn't it? So, I think you could ride your bike faster in a safer way with a bit more knowledge, or get yourself a track bike, and then you don't really have to worry, do you? Then you keep your Aprilia nice and pristine. But in any case, I think track instructions are a really good idea anyway. So that's what I think. But thanks very much for your question, Gavin. Right, let's moving on. I mean, I'm guessing you're in America with your description of paved runoff. So I'm not sure what race schools are out there actually. Obviously California Superbike School. But yeah, okay, so next question is from Special Cirques. How do you submit a question to you? Well, you've just done it. I'd like to know if you'd ever buy a bike from a Superbike factory, or if you can't answer that, would you prefer to buy a bike from a dedicated one-mark dealer, a multi-mark dealer, or always privately? Well, good question. First of all, I'd say that it kind of depends on your situation. If you want to buy a bike and you want the peace of mind of like a service plan, a warranty, you want to get a PCP deal or a finance deal, then a dealer is going to be the way to go. You know, hopefully you'd find a dealer that treats you nicely and you get a really pleasurable experience of buying the bike. And if it's quite a kind of a specialised bike like a Panigale V4 or whatever, you know, buying it from a Ducati dealer is going to give you that extra peace of mind. On the flip side, you can go privately and probably get a better deal, because obviously a dealer's got to add his overheads onto the price of the bike so we can keep running. So private, you get a better deal generally, but obviously you haven't got the confidence of having the comeback or, you know, being able to get finance or whatever. But the other thing I'd say is that as a road tester, we're very much in this strange bubble, disconnected bubble from biking, where I don't really have much to do with bike shops or much interaction with readers about their experience with buying and selling bikes. So what I'd say is I flip that question round and ask you lot what you think. You know, do you think it's better to buy from a multi-franchise dealer? Do you think it's best to buy from a mono dealer, like a bespoke dealer? Or do you think it's best to find a bargain and haggle with another person? So yeah, be really interested to hear your comments, which you can leave down the bottom. So thank you very much for that. Let's hope you get some answers from that. So finally is a question from John, user WZ4W51B1H, which reminds me of a Wi-Fi code I once knew. Hi Michael, if we put you on the road on a Yamaha MT-09 SP and you push to 9/10, do you think your clone on a monster powerful bike like a 1290 Super Duke R, V4 etc. would be able to ride away from you, assuming the same tyres and also pushing to 9/10? Regards, John. Great question. So on the track, obviously the answer's obvious. You know, you'd be able to stretch on a more powerful bike compared to a middleweight naked like a MT-09 SP, which incidentally is a fantastic bike now that Yamaha have sorted out the MT-09's front end, which was awful before. It's one of the things from its launch that we said, that it just understeers because it's so high and hard and the throttle was terrible. It took years for Yamaha to address that, but now the new MT-09s are lower at the front, they've got nice suspension. So on the track, yeah, I'd beat myself off. But on the road, no, there'd be no difference. You wouldn't be able to use the advantage of a bigger engine on the road. Having a big bike's nice. You can't use all the performance, but what it does allow you to do is kind of, ironically, ride in a more relaxed way, because you're not having to throw gears at the bike and keep the engine on the wheel to get going. And also, if you're partial to a cheeky wheelie, big bike's better at that as well. But a middleweight is going to be more fun to ride at the same speed because it's just more involving. You'll have to use the engine more. You've got a lighter bike that's more agile. You've got narrower tyres which add to the agility, and you can kind of just boss it more. It's always much more enjoyable to, you know, use a smaller bike to the full rather than just, you know, nibble away at the performance on a big bike. it's nice to have a big bike, but quite often you feel unfulfilled. Whereas on a smaller bike, it's always more fun. You know, even at launches, we have the funniest laugh out loud time on smaller bikes. You know, if we go on a racetrack with a load of R7s, it's much more fun than being on a racetrack with a load of R1s, that's for sure. You know, it goes right back to when you first started riding, and we were messing around as mopeds with our mates, slipstreaming them down the bypasses and stuff. So yeah, if there was a clone of me in the world, which would be a very unfortunate thing, I wouldn't be any faster on the big bike. I'll probably pull bigger wheelies, but I think ultimately the smaller bike would be much more fun and a lot cheaper. So it's win-win-win. So that's it for this Q&A video. Thank you very much for watching. Keep those questions and comments rolling in, and we'll see you on the next one.